The graveyard shift horror, true night cleaning stories that will chill you. Picture this. It's 2:47 a.m. You're alone in a massive office building, 30 floors of empty cubicles, dark hallways, and that weird humming sound that fluorescent lights make when there's nobody around to hear them. You're pushing a cleaning cart, and every wheel squeak echoes through the silence like a scream. And then, you hear footsteps that aren't yours. You freeze. The footsteps stop. You move again. They start again. You tell yourself it's just the building settling. Just your imagination. Just something. But deep down, in that primal part of your brain that kept your ancestors alive, you're not alone. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about the graveyard shift horror, true night cleaning stories that will absolutely chill you to your core. Night shift cleaners in massive buildings, where something else wandered. If you're someone who loves real stories about night janitors, hit that subscribe button right now and leave a like if this video helps you understand why some people refuse to work after dark ever again. Because here's the thing, we're going to talk about something that most people never consider. What happens in those buildings when everyone leaves? What walks those halls at 3 a.m.? And why do so many night cleaners quit after just one shift? Now you might be thinking, Nick, come on, it's just cleaning. How scary can it actually be? And look, I get it. I used to think the same thing. But after researching what I'm about to share with you today, after digging into the real stories, the documented incidents, the testimonies that were given to police and priests, I can tell you with absolute certainty, some buildings should never be cleaned alone at night. Today, I'm going to tell you the true story of Marcus Webb, a night janitor who worked at the Riverside Medical Center in Tennessee. This is a story that involves documented deaths, spiritual possession, and something so dark that it ended up requiring the intervention of not just one, but 3 different religious authorities. This isn't fiction. This isn't folklore. This is what actually happened. And before we dive in, I need you to understand something. Marcus was a skeptic. He was a man of science. He didn't believe in ghosts, demons, or anything supernatural. He believed in hard work, paying his bills, and getting home safely to his family. But by the end of his employment at Riverside Medical Center, Marcus Webb believed in something else entirely. Let me paint you a picture of Marcus Webb. 38 years old. Father of 2. Former Marine. Marcus wasn't the type to scare easily, and that's exactly why he took the night shift position at Riverside Medical Center in October 2019. The pay was almost double what day shift made, and with his daughter's college tuition looming, he needed that money. Riverside Medical Center had a reputation. It was built in 1923, and over its nearly 100-year history, it had seen thousands of deaths. It started as a tuberculosis sanitarium, back when TB was basically a death sentence, then transitioned to a general hospital, then a psychiatric facility in the 1960s, and finally back to a medical center in the 1990s. The building was massive. 7 floors. Over 200,000 square feet. Long corridors that seemed to stretch into infinity under the dim emergency lighting that stayed on after hours. Marcus's shift was 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. 5 nights a week. Tuesday through Saturday. His supervisor, an older woman named Dolores, gave him the tour on his first night. As they walked through the empty halls, Marcus noticed something odd. Dolores would never enter certain rooms. She'd point to them, tell him what needed to be cleaned, but she'd stay in the doorway. "You'll want to prop those doors open when you clean," she told him, gesturing to a series of rooms on the 3rd floor. "Don't let them close behind you." "Why not?" Marcus asked. Dolores looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Just don't." Now, here's what most people don't realize about night shift work in large buildings. The isolation isn't gradual. It's immediate. The moment the last person leaves, the entire atmosphere changes. The building transforms from a place of life and activity into something else. Something that feels watchful. Marcus noticed it that first night. He started on the 7th floor, working his way down. The protocol was simple. Empty trash, vacuum carpets, sanitized surfaces, clean bathrooms, move to the next floor. Straightforward. Mechanical. But around 1:30 a.m., as Marcus was cleaning an office on the 6th floor, he heard it for the first time. Footsteps. Heavy footsteps. But coming from the floor above him, the floor he'd just finished cleaning. Marcus stopped. Listen. The footsteps continued for about 15 seconds, then stopped abruptly. He pulled out his phone and called the security guard stationed at the main entrance. A guy named Raymond. "Hey Raymond, you got anybody else in the building? I'm hearing footsteps on 7. Raymond checked the security logs. Negative, Marcus. You're the only one on the upper floors. Building's locked down tight. You want me to come check it out? Marcus hesitated. He didn't want to seem paranoid on his first night. Nah man, I'm good. Probably just the pipes or something. Yeah, Raymond said, but there was something in his tone. Probably the pipes. Marcus went back to work, but he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him. He found himself looking over his shoulder constantly, checking behind doors before entering rooms, moving faster than necessary. By 3 a.m. he was on the 4th floor, the old psychiatric ward. And that's when things changed. The 4th floor had a different energy. Even Marcus, skeptic that he was, could feel it. The air was colder, not just cool but actually cold, like walking into a refrigerator. His breath came out in small clouds. The hallway was longer than the others, and the emergency lights seemed dimmer here. Some were flickering. That irregular, stuttering flicker that makes shadows dance at the edge of your vision. Marcus pushed his cleaning cart down the hallway, the wheels squeaking rhythmically. Room 421. Room 423. Room 425. Each one had to be cleaned. He started with 421. It was a patient room, or had been. Now it was used for storage. Old medical equipment. Wheelchairs. Hospital beds. All covered in dust. Marcus propped the door open with his cart, just like Dolores had instructed. He began cleaning, working methodically, trying to ignore the growing sense of unease in his chest. That's when he heard the voice. Clear as day. A woman's voice. Singing. Not words exactly. More like humming. A lullaby. The kind a mother might sing to soothe a crying child. Marcus stopped. Turned around. The hallway was empty. "Hello?" he called out. His voice echoed down the corridor, but there was no response. Just that humming, continuing somewhere in the distance. He stepped into the hallway. Listen. The sound was coming from further down the hall. From room 447. Now you might be thinking, Marcus, just leave. Get out of there. And look, that would be the smart move. But here's the thing about people like Marcus. Marines, security guards, first responders, they're trained to investigate. To check on things. Not to run. So Marcus walked toward room 447. The humming got louder as he approached. It was definitely coming from inside. The door was closed. Marcus put his hand on the handle. It was ice cold, so cold it almost burned his palm. He turned the handle. Pushed the door open. The humming stopped immediately. The room was empty. Completely empty. No furniture. No equipment. Just bare walls, a dirty window, and that overwhelming cold. But there was something else in the room. Marcus could feel it. A presence. Something aware. Something watching. And then he saw it. In the corner of the room where the shadows were deepest, there was a darker shadow. Human-shaped. Standing perfectly still. Marcus's heart slammed in his chest. "Who's there?" he demanded, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. The shadow didn't move. Marcus reached for the light switch on the wall. Flipped it. The overhead fluorescence flickered on, bathing the room in harsh white light. The corner was empty, but Marcus could still feel it. That presence. It hadn't left. It had just hidden. He backed out of the room slowly, never taking his eyes off that corner. As soon as he was in the hallway, he pulled the door shut and leaned against the wall, his breath coming in short gasps. His phone rang, making him jump. It was Raymond. "Marcus? You okay, man? I'm seeing some weird stuff on the cameras." "What kind of weird stuff?" "Doors opening and closing on four. Like a lot of them. All at once." Marcus looked down the hallway. Every single door was open. Every single one. Including room 447. "I'm coming down," Marcus said, his voice tight. "Good call," Raymond replied. But as Marcus started walking toward the stairwell, pushing his cart, every single door began to close. One by one. In sequence. Following him down the hallway. Slam. 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 Marcus abandoned his cart and ran. Marcus didn't quit that night. He probably should have, but he needed the money. Besides, Marines don't run from shadows. At least that's what he told himself. But he did some research. Over the next 2 days, his days off, Marcus dug into the history of Riverside Medical Center. What he found chilled him more than anything he'd experienced in that building. Room 447 had a history. Between 1967 and 1971, when the building operated as a psychiatric facility, Room 447 was used for a specific type of patient. Women diagnosed with postpartum psychosis. Back then, treatment was, let's just say it was barbaric. Electroshock therapy, insulin coma therapy, and in some cases lobotomies. Marcus found newspaper archives. 3 women died in room 447, all within a 2-year period, all under suspicious circumstances. The first was Margaret Holloway, 26 years old. Official cause of death, cardiac arrest during electroshock therapy. But according to a whistleblower nurse who spoke to the press years later, Margaret's death was no accident. The voltage had been deliberately increased beyond safe levels by a doctor who believed she was possessed by maternal demons. The second was Sarah Chin, 23 years old. Cause of death, suicide by hanging. But Sarah had been in 4-point restraints when she supposedly hung herself. The investigation was quickly closed. The third was Rebecca Morris, 31 years old. She died in 1971, and her death was what finally got the psychiatric unit shut down. Rebecca was found in room 447, apparently having died of fright. Her face was frozen in an expression of absolute terror. Her eyes were open, and according to the autopsy report, her heart had simply stopped. No medical explanation. Just stopped. But here's where it gets really interesting and really dark. Marcus found something else in his research. A letter written by a nurse named Dorothy Jenkins, dated 1972, sent to the hospital administrator. In this letter, Dorothy described what she witnessed in room 447 on the night Rebecca Morris died. I'm going to read you an excerpt, and I want you to really listen to this. "I heard Rebecca screaming. Not words, just screaming. I ran to 447 and found Drive Carlisle standing in the doorway watching. Rebecca was on the bed, her body arched unnaturally, her eyes rolled back. But she wasn't alone. There was something in the room with her. I couldn't see it clearly, but I could see its effect. The shadows moved wrong. The temperature dropped so severely that my breath clouded. And then Rebecca stopped screaming. She just stopped. Everything stopped. Dr. Carlisle turned to me and said, 'She invited it in. This is what happens when you invite it in.' He left. And I stood there looking at Rebecca's body, and I swear to God I saw that shadow move across her face. Like it was claiming her." Dr. Carlisle was never prosecuted. In fact, his records show he worked at Riverside for another 3 years before retiring. He died in 1985. But according to Dorothy's letter, Dr. Carlisle wasn't treating patients in room 447. He was conducting experiments, spiritual experiments. He believed that postpartum psychosis was actually demonic possession, and he was trying to prove it by invoking these entities. He was summoning demons into mentally ill women and documenting what happened. And according to Dorothy, he was successful. Marcus read all of this 2 days before he was scheduled to go back to work. He considered quitting. He really did. But then he thought about his daughter's tuition, his bills, his family. So he went back. And that's when the real horror began. Marcus's third shift at Riverside Medical Center started normally enough. He arrived at 11 p.m., checked in with Raymond, got his supplies, and started his route. But this time he made a decision. He was going to skip the 4th floor. Just clean around it. Nobody would know. Except, around 1 a.m., his supervisor Dolores called him. "Marcus, you need to do a deep clean on 4 tonight. Room 447 specifically. There's a maintenance inspection tomorrow, and that room needs to be spotless." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Dolores, can't that wait until day shift?" There was a long pause. "Marcus, I know about 447. But this job needs to be done, and you're the one getting paid to do it. I need you to go up there and clean that room. Do you understand?" It wasn't a request. "Yeah," Marcus said. "I understand." He took his time getting there. He cleaned every floor on the way up, working as slowly as possible. But eventually, around 2:45 a.m., he stood in front of the stairwell door that led to the 4th floor. Marcus stood there for a full minute, just breathing, psyching himself up. Then he pushed through. The cold hit him immediately. It was even worse than before. His breath came out in thick clouds, and he could see frost forming on the walls. The hallway was silent. Too silent. None of the usual building sounds. No humming lights, no distant traffic, no heating system rattling. Just silence. Marcus pushed his cart down the hall, each squeak of the wheels impossibly loud. Room 421. Room 423. Room 425. Each one looked normal, but he could feel eyes on him. Multiple eyes, watching from the darkness beyond each doorway. Finally, he reached 447. The door was already open. Marcus stopped. He distinctly remembered closing every door the last time he was here. He was certain of it. He peered inside. The room was dark, but he could see well enough. The moonlight through the window provided a pale, cold illumination. The room wasn't empty anymore. There was a hospital bed in the center of the room. An old one, rusty, with leather restraints hanging from the sides. Marcus knew that bed hadn't been there before. He'd been in this room. It had been completely empty. "This isn't real," he whispered to himself. "This isn't real." But he could smell it. Old leather, rust, and something else. Something organic and rotten. His phone rang, nearly giving him a heart attack. It was Raymond. "Marcus, get out of there right now." "What? Why?" "The cameras on 4 just went out. All of them. At the same time. And I'm hearing—" Raymond paused. "I'm hearing screaming coming through the intercom system. Female voices. Multiple female voices. Get out of that building now." Marcus didn't need to be told twice. He turned to run. The door to 447 slammed shut behind him. Every door in the hallway slammed shut simultaneously. And then they started opening again. Slowly. One by one. And from each darkened doorway Marcus could see them. Shadows. Human-shaped. Feminine. Emerging from each room. They didn't walk. They glided. Moving toward him with an unnatural fluidity. Marcus ran. He ran for the stairwell, but the door wouldn't open. He pulled and pulled, but it was locked from the inside, something that should have been impossible. The shadows were getting closer. He could hear them now. That humming. That lullaby. But there were multiple voices now, all humming slightly out of sync, creating a dissonant, maddening harmony. "Please," Marcus shouted, pounding on the door. "Please." And then he felt it. A hand. Ice cold. Touching the back of his neck. Marcus spun around. They were right there. These shadow women. Their faces were wrong, too long, too dark, with eyes that weren't eyes but rather voids that seemed to pull at his vision. The closest one tilted her head, and Marcus heard her voice, not through his ears but directly in his mind. "He promised us new flesh. Dr. Carlisle promised. "Are you the one?" "I don't know what you're talking about," Marcus said, his voice shaking. "You came to our room. You heard our song. You acknowledged us. That was the invitation. I didn't invite anything." "Everyone says that." The shadows moved closer, and Marcus felt that cold seeping into his bones. His legs went numb. His vision started to darken at the edges. He was dying. He could feel it. His heart was slowing, just like Rebecca Morris's had. And then he remembered something his grandmother used to tell him when he was a child. She was deeply religious, and she always said, "When you face the darkness, speak the light." Marcus had never been particularly religious. But in that moment, with death closing in, he found himself praying, out loud, the Lord's Prayer. "Our Father, who art in heaven." The shadows recoiled slightly. "Hallowed be thy name." They backed away further, and that humming turned into something else. A hissing. An angry, frustrated hissing. "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done." The door behind Marcus suddenly gave way, and he fell backward through it, tumbling down the stairs. He felt bones crack, felt pain explode through his body, but he didn't stop. He kept praying, kept reciting those words even as he scrambled down the stairwell. He could hear them following. Those shadows. Pouring down the stairwell like smoke. But they stayed just beyond the light of the emergency bulbs, unable or unwilling to cross into the illumination. Marcus burst through the ground floor door and found Raymond standing there with his phone out, already calling 911. "Holy God," Raymond whispered, looking at Marcus's face. Marcus would later find out that his hair, which had been black that morning, had gone completely white on the right side of his head, the side where that shadow had touched him. He had 3 broken ribs from his fall down the stairs, a fractured wrist, and what doctors described as severe frostbite on the back of his neck, despite the building being temperature controlled. But Marcus was alive. Barely. Marcus spent 3 days in the hospital, ironically in a different wing of the same Riverside Medical Center. He refused to be anywhere near the 4th floor. While he was recovering, something happened that convinced him this wasn't over. On his second night in the hospital, Marcus woke up at exactly 2:47 a.m. He didn't know why, just suddenly jolted awake with absolute clarity. His room was freezing. And there, standing in the corner where the shadows were deepest, was a figure. Feminine. Watching him. Marcus tried to scream, but no sound came out. He reached for the call button, but his arm wouldn't move. He was paralyzed. The figure glided closer, and Marcus could see her more clearly now. She looked almost human, almost, but her movements were wrong. Her face was too pale. And her eyes. "You didn't finish the prayer," she whispered directly into his mind. "You got away, but you didn't finish the prayer. We can still find you. We will always be able to find you. What do you want?" Marcus managed to choke out. "We want what was taken from us. Our children. Our lives. Our peace. Dr. Carlisle stole it all. And then he bound us to that place. We cannot leave. But you can bring others to us. You acknowledged us. You are marked." "I won't do that." The shadow leaned in close, and Marcus felt that cold radiating from her like a physical force. "You don't have a choice. You're connected to us now. And every night at 2:47 a.m., we will visit you. We will remind you. Until you either come back to us, or bring us someone else." Then she was gone. The warmth returned to the room. Marcus could move again. He immediately pressed the call button, and when the nurse arrived, he told her everything. She didn't believe him, of course. Gave him something to help him sleep. But Marcus noticed she left the lights on when she left. The next morning, Marcus contacted a priest. Father Michael O'Reilly from St. Joseph's Catholic Church. Marcus explained what had happened, all of it. The 4th floor. Room 447. The shadows. The nightly visitations. Father O'Reilly listened without judgment, then asked a single question. "Did you invite them in any way? Even accidentally?" "I went into their room," Marcus said. I heard them calling and I went in. Father O'Reilly nodded grimly. That may have been enough. You acknowledged them. In their reality, that was permission. Can you help me? I can try. But I need to be honest with you, Marcus. If these entities are what I think they are, if they're truly bound to that location through ritual, then simply blessing you won't be enough. We need to address the source. The fourth floor. The fourth floor. What happened next wasn't a single event. It was a campaign. A spiritual war that lasted 3 months. Father O'Reilly started by performing a blessing on Marcus. It helped. The nightly visitations stopped for almost a week. But then they came back and they were angrier. Marcus would wake up with scratches on his arms. Words carved into his skin in a language he didn't recognize. His house would get unbearably cold at night. His wife started seeing shadows in their bedroom. His children started having nightmares about the sad ladies who want to come inside. This thing was spreading, infecting his entire family. Father O'Reilly brought in help. A demonologist named Dr. Helen Carter, who had spent 30 years studying cases of alleged possession and hauntings. She interviewed Marcus, recorded his experiences, and came to a disturbing conclusion. These aren't just ghosts, she told him. Ghosts are residual energy, echoes of people who once lived. What you're dealing with is something that was human once but has been changed, corrupted. Dr. Carlisle didn't just summon demons into those women. He bound their souls to those demons, merged them, created something new, something that's both human and not human. How do we stop it? We need to go back to room 447. We need to break whatever ritual Dr. Carlisle performed. And we need to release those women. But there was a problem. Riverside Medical Center had closed the 4th floor indefinitely after Marcus's incident. They'd claimed it was for renovation, but Marcus knew the truth. They'd sealed it off. No one was allowed up there. Getting permission to enter would be impossible. So they didn't ask for permission. On November 13, 2019, at exactly midnight, Marcus returned to Riverside Medical Center. With him were Father O'Reilly, Dr. Carter, and 2 other priests, Father Rodriguez from a local Episcopalian church and Rabbi Stein from Temple Beth Israel. They determined that this situation required a multi-faith approach. Raymond, the security guard who'd helped Marcus, let them in. He didn't ask questions. He just unlocked the door to the 4th floor stairwell and said, "Do what you need to do. I'll make sure nobody comes up." The 5 of them climbed to the 4th floor. The cold was immediate and overwhelming. Their breath came out in thick clouds. Frost covered every surface. The hallway was silent, but they could all feel it. That presence. Multiple presences. Watching. Waiting. They walked to room 447. The door was open. Inside, the room had transformed. It wasn't just a hospital bed now. The walls were covered in scratches, thousands of them. Names carved over and over again. Margaret, Sarah, Rebecca. Over and over like a mantra, like a prayer. And standing in the center of the room, surrounding that old hospital bed, were the shadows. Not hiding anymore. Fully visible. 3 distinct figures. 3 women. Their faces were clearer now, faces frozen in eternal anguish and rage. Father O'Reilly stepped forward, holding his Bible and a vial of holy water. "In the name of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. You have no power here," the shadows screamed in unison, their voices like breaking glass. "He made us something new. Something beyond your God." "No entity is beyond God," Father Rodriguez said, stepping forward with his own holy water. "You are suffering. Let us help you find peace." Peace. The middle shadow, Marcus recognized her as Rebecca Morris from the photographs he'd seen, laughed bitterly. "We were given no peace. We were tortured, killed, and then bound here by that monster Carlisle. He said we were vessels for demons. He opened us up to darkness and then trapped us in it. Forever." Dr. Carter stepped forward carefully. Margaret, Sarah, Rebecca, I know your names. I know what was done to you. What Dr. Carlisle did was evil, unforgivable. But you don't have to let that evil define you forever. You can let go. We cannot let go, Sarah's shadow hissed. We are bound. The ritual was never completed. We are stuck between life and death, human and demon, agony and nothing. Then let us complete it, Rabbi Stein said. Let us give you the release that was denied. The shadows were silent for a long moment. Then Rebecca spoke, her voice softer now. You would do this? Even though we threatened him? Even though we hurt him? Yes, Marcus said, speaking for the first time since entering the room. Because you didn't choose this. He did this to you. The ritual that followed lasted 4 hours. Each religious leader performed their tradition's rites for the dead. They prayed. They blessed. They anointed the room with holy water, holy oil, and salt. They burned sage and spoke words of power in Hebrew, Latin, and English. And slowly, so slowly, the cold began to lift. The shadows began to take on more human forms. The rage in their faces softened. Margaret spoke first. I see light. I see my baby. My son. He's waiting for me. Sarah, I'm so tired. I just want to rest. Rebecca, thank you. Thank you for seeing us, for remembering us. And then one by one they faded. Not violently. Not with screaming or chaos. They simply let go. Like people finally allowed to exhale after holding their breath for 50 years. When it was over, room 447 was just a room again. Cold, yes. Empty, yes. But no longer malevolent. The scratches on the walls remained, but they felt different now. Not like threats. Like memorials. Dr. Carter collected samples of the markings. Documentation. Evidence. Father O'Reilly blessed the room one final time. And Marcus stood in the center of that space and whispered, I'm sorry for what happened to you. He could have sworn he felt a hand, warm this time, touch his shoulder briefly. A gesture of forgiveness. Or perhaps goodbye. Marcus never went back to Riverside Medical Center after that night. He quit his janitorial position and found work in a warehouse during the day shift. He took the pay cut. He didn't care. His hair never returned to its original color. The white streak remained, a permanent reminder of what happened to him. But the visitations stopped. His family was safe. And for the first time in months, Marcus could sleep without fear. The 4th floor of Riverside Medical Center was permanently closed after that night. Officially due to structural concerns. But Raymond told Marcus the truth. After they left, the building inspectors found that room 447 had sustained what they described as impossible damage. The floor was cracked in patterns that suggested extreme temperature changes. The walls had stress fractures consistent with earthquake damage, despite no earthquakes occurring in the area. And every single electrical system on the 4th floor had burned out simultaneously at exactly 4:47 a.m. on November 14, 2019, the hour the ritual was completed. Dr. Carter published her findings in a journal of paranormal research. The article was titled The Carlisle Bindings, a case study in ritual trauma and spiritual imprisonment. It documented everything: the history, the deaths, the encounters, and the release. The article included a warning: locations where severe trauma has occurred, especially trauma combined with ritual intent, can become spiritually charged. These locations can trap entities, both human and otherwise, in states of perpetual suffering. Urban exploration and night work in such buildings should never be undertaken lightly and never alone. Father O'Reilly added a note to the diocesan records about Riverside Medical Center. It's sealed, but Marcus knows what it says. The building contains residual spiritual contamination. The 4th floor should be demolished, not renovated. But if demolition is impossible, the floor must never be occupied. As far as Marcus knows, that recommendation has been followed. But here's the thing that haunts him still: And here's where this story takes its final turn into something truly chilling. About 6 months after the incident, Marcus got a call from Raymond. "Hey man, you remember Dr. Carlisle? The doctor who did all that stuff on the 4th floor?" "Yeah, why?" "I was going through some old personnel files. They're digitizing everything and I got assigned to help. I found Carlisle's file. Marcus, he didn't retire in 1975 like the record said." "What do you mean?" "He died in 1975. In the hospital. In room 447. They found him dead in that room with no explanation. Just like Rebecca Morris. Heart failure. Face frozen in terror." Marcus felt ice water pour down his spine. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, what if the thing that killed those women in that room wasn't Dr. Carlisle summoning demons? What if it was something that was already there? Something older? And Carlisle was feeding it? And when he stopped, it took him instead." They never spoke about it again. But Marcus thinks about it. Late at night. When he can't sleep. He thinks about what might still be in that building. What might be sleeping now, waiting for someone else to wake it up. Because here's the final thing you need to understand. Margaret, Sarah, and Rebecca found peace. They were released. But the thing that Dr. Carlisle was working with, the entity that he bound those women to, that wasn't released. That's still there. Still waiting. Still hungry. And someday someone will inevitably go back to that 4th floor. Some urban explorer. Some cleaning crew. Some contractor hired to finally demolish the building. And when they do, they'll find room 447. They'll hear the humming. And they'll make the same mistake Marcus almost made. They'll listen. So here's my question for you. Would you take that night shift? Would you be the one cleaning those halls at 2:47 a.m., knowing what might be watching you from room 447? Because here's what most people don't realize. These buildings are everywhere. Old hospitals. Old psychiatric facilities. Old prisons. Places where people suffered. Where they died in pain and fear and anger. And some of those places remember. Some of those places keep their dead. The graveyard shift horror isn't about jump scares or special effects. It's about real people encountering real evil in real places. It's about the moment when you realize that your shift, your ordinary, mundane, pay-the-bills job, has just become a fight for your soul. Marcus Webb survived. But thousands of night workers across the world encounter similar situations and never tell anyone. They quit without explanation. They refuse to work nights ever again. They carry scars, physical and spiritual, that they can't explain to their families. If this video has taught you anything, let it be this. Respect the spaces you enter. Respect the dead. And if you ever find yourself in a building at night, and you hear humming coming from an empty room, don't investigate. Don't acknowledge it. And for the love of God, don't listen. Because once you listen, once you acknowledge, once you open that door, you've issued an invitation. And some invitations can't be taken back. My name is Nick. Thank you for watching. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button and subscribe for more true horror stories. And if you work a night shift yourself, leave a comment below. Tell me your story.